In 1933, on a frost-hard morning somewhere in the Carolina piedmont, a family rose 2 hours before the sun to butcher a single hog, and on that one animal rode every meal they would eat until the next winter came. There was a fire under an iron tub down by the branch, steam climbing into the cold, and a quiet understanding among everyone present, old and young alike, that before the day was over, this hog would become food, fat, medicine, a whole year of survival, and that almost nothing of it would ever touch the ground. Most of us have lost the thread of how that was even possible. We buy pork in trays under plastic and could not name 5 cuts of the animal. We think of those old butchering days as something crude and desperate, poverty doing what poverty had to do. But here is the truth that turns that idea on its head. Those families were not careless. They were so complete, so exact, so unwilling to waste a single ounce that our own government would one day forbid by law one of the very parts they prized, writing it into the Code of Federal Regulations as a thing that shall not be saved for human food. They had a word for that part. They called the lungs the lights, the old name, the light organ, the one filled with air. Hold on to that word. It comes back. 2 things to watch for. There is one number on a thermometer that, missed by a hair, could ruin an entire winter of meat. And there is one part laid out on those plank tables that the United States government now bans by name. Both are coming. We are counting down 30 dying Depression-era hog butchering methods that used every part the USDA would ban today. Let us begin at 30. Number 30, the bladder put to use. Even the smallest, least likely parts of the hog were saved, and the bladder was one of them. Cleaned and dried, it became a household odd job and a plaything for the children. And in old Mobile and New Orleans, the early Mardi Gras float makers decorated it in carnival green and purple and gold, long before store-bought goods existed. A few cents of factory supplies erased the whole custom, but keep that bladder in mind because it had a second and more important job before winter ended. Before we go on, do one thing for me. Subscribe, because what is coming up this list is the kind of knowledge that carried families through the worst years this country ever knew, and it is vanishing faster than anyone is bothering to write it down. Number 29, brains scrambled with eggs. The brains spoiled faster than anything else on the hog, so they went straight into the first skillet, beaten into eggs over a wood stove while the rest of the work went on outside in the cold. For a great many old men, it was the finest breakfast of the year, eaten standing up with the frost still on the ground. You can still find a can of pork brains on a back shelf in a few southern groceries, but the fresh dish, eaten the morning of the butchering, is all but gone, and the head was only beginning to give. Number 28, cracklings for cornbread. When the fat was cooked down, what stayed behind were cracklings, crisp little curls of skin, and a child's job was to stir the pot and pull them free. Pressed into cakes and salted, they kept all winter as a snack. Folded into cornmeal, they became cracklin' bread, a poor man's feast made from the leavings of the fat. The store sells a bagged pork rind now and calls it the same thing, but the fat those cracklings came from was the real treasure. 27, rendering the lard. The fat went into the same black cast iron washpots the family boiled their clothes in, and it was cooked slow over wild cherry or hickory until nothing was left but clear grease and cracklings. One fear ruled that fire: scorch the lard and you scorched the whole year's cooking, so the oldest, steadiest hand often refused to let anyone else near it. The can of shortening on the supermarket shelf replaced it, and how they kept that lard from turning would stop a modern cook cold. 26. Herbs in the lard. Helen Hoggard, born in 1917 on a farm in Bertie County, North Carolina, kept her lard from going rancid by stirring in rosemary, and she raised her sage, she said, in a rotten stump, which was the best way there was. No refrigeration, no chemical preservative. It is the kind of small knowledge that lived in one woman's hands and died with her generation, and the smaller cuts still had to last just as long. 25. The feet, the ears, the tail. Nothing at the ends of the hog was thrown away. The front feet were prized over the back because they carried more meat, and they were pickled in brine and vinegar and eaten through the winter like candy. The ears went into other dishes for their gristle, and the tail went to the smoker with everything else. Pickled pig's feet still sit in a jar at a few country stores, gone pink and jellied, but the hands that reach for them are old now, and even the drippings were not yet finished giving. 24. The gravies. From the grease left in the pan came sawmill gravy, a little flour and milk and pepper worked into the drippings, and from a slice of ham fried hard came red-eye gravy, the pan cooked down to a thin, dark essence. Most kitchens have forgotten there was ever a difference between the two. But one cut on the whole hog could not wait, could not be cured, could not be saved a single day. Everything so far has been the warm end of the day, the kitchen. Now the list turns. From here on, we are out in the cold by the fire and the tub, where the real labor was, and where one wrong move could cost you the animal, your hands, or both. 23. The fresh tenderloin, the freshes. There was one cut that could never be put up, and it was the tenderloin, eaten the very night of the butchering, fried with cathead biscuits and gravy while everyone sat down, bone-tired and full. You could taste it on your tongue all day before it ever hit the pan. Later, families learned to can the tenderloin under hot lard, and that canned tenderloin was prized above almost anything in the smokehouse. But fresh that first night, it was the reward for the day. After that one meal, everything else had to survive. And that is where it got dangerous. 22. The clean kill. Everything that followed depended on the animal being put down quickly and humanely, in one sure moment, with a calm hand and a settled hog. There was no margin in it. Done right, it was over before the animal knew. Done poorly, the whole day's work could be lost. And the steps that came next had to move fast. Number 21. Draining and saving the blood. As soon as the animal was down, it had to be bled quickly and cleanly, and if the family meant to make blood sausage, the blood was carefully saved rather than lost. It was the coldest, most exact work of the morning. We leave this to distant plants now, out of sight, and that saved blood became a dish no inspector would wave through today. 20. Scald. Here is the number I promised you. The water in the tub had to hold near 160 degrees, and that figure was a knife's edge. A few degrees too cool, and the bristles clung and you scraped by hand for hours. A few degrees too hot, and the hair set fast into the skin, locked there, and worse, the meat began to cook on the bone, and a whole winter of pork could be ruined in the time it took to dip the carcass. Most had no thermometer at all, just an old hand who knew the look of the water. Get it right, and an old trick made the hair surrender even faster. 19. Ashes in the water. The trick was a coffee can of hardwood ashes, hickory if you had it, stirred into the scalding water. The lye in those ashes loosened the bristles so they slipped from the hide with far less fight. It was backyard chemistry learned by no book, and it worked because lye and hot water break down the hair's grip on the skin. No one does this anymore, and even with it, the next hour was punishing work. 18. Scraping the bristles. Once the hair would slip, every hand fell on the carcass with a hog scraper, a round-edged tool made for exactly this, and where there was no scraper, a plain mason jar lid did the same work. You scraped the whole animal smooth and fast before it cooled and the hair set again. A spinning drum in a packing plant does it in seconds now. And then came the part that took real strength, lifting 500 pounds clear off the ground. This is the point in the old accounts where the young men stopped joking. A hog in the 1930s commonly dressed at 400 or 500 pounds, twice the size of the lean market hog of today. And now that weight had to go up into the air. 17, hoisting the hog, the whole animal, 400 or 500 pounds of it, had to be raised clear of the ground for the next stage of the work, lifted on a block and tackle, a chain fall, or later a tractor boom. It was heavy, dangerous work, and men were hurt doing it. A hydraulic line in a modern plant raises 10,000 hogs in a single 10-hour shift, and now one careless cut could spoil everything. 16, dressing the carcass. Opening the hog was delicate work because one careless cut could spoil the meat all around it, so it was done slowly and exactly, with the inner parts removed and set aside with care. It was surgery done with a butcher knife by firelight. One slip and hours of work soured at once, and what was set aside in that step was a full day's work all by itself. 15, cleaning the chitterlings. The intestines were turned into food too, but only after the hardest, most thankless cleaning job of the whole day, carried to running water and washed again and again by hand until they were spotless. Done right, chitlins fried up into something families drove miles for. In a few counties there are still chitlin clubs so prized that, the old joke goes, you can only join when a member dies. And those same parts had a second life waiting. 14, the casings. Those same cleaned parts became the skins for the sausage. One person turned the crank of the grinder while another guided the seasoned meat down into the casing, tying off the links by hand. Hot or mild, the sausage was made in great quantity and hung or canned for the months ahead. The bagged synthetic casing and the factory line took this skill out of the home for good, but the big cuts still had to be made to last clear through summer. 13, the salt box. The hams, shoulders, and side meat went into a thick wooden box and were buried in salt, sometimes for a week or more, to draw the blood and water out. Salt was the first line against rot, the thing that made winter pork possible at all before any family had a sliver of ice. Too little and the ham spoiled at the bone. Too much and it was ruined another way. The home freezer made the whole ritual unnecessary, but salt alone was only half of what preserved a country ham. 12, the smokehouse. After the salt came the smoke. The cuts were rubbed with black pepper and brown sugar, hung in a small dark building, and held over a slow smolder of hickory from late winter into the early summer, sometimes longer. The smoke and the salt and the time together made a ham that could hang in the heat for months and only grow better. That smell, the inside of a working smokehouse, is something almost no one under 60 has ever breathed. And one ingredient in that old cure is now strictly capped by federal law. Now we are into the work that separated a family that merely survived the winter from one that ate well through it. The curing, the chemistry, the parts the modern world has decided we are no longer allowed to use the way they did. 11, the saltpeter. The thing that gave country ham its deep color and held back the worst of the spoilage was saltpeter, potassium nitrate, the ancient meat cure, and farmers used it by feel, a handful to the cut. The federal government does not allow that anymore. Since the curing regulations of 1925 and 1926, the amount of nitrite that can go into cured meat has been held tight, near 156 parts per million in sausage, 120 in bacon, and even at its highest, in dry cured country ham, 625 and not a grain more. What a grandfather judged with his bare hand is now weighed to the part per million, and the head was still waiting on the table. 10. Souse and head cheese. The whole head was cleaned and boiled until the meat fell from the bone, and then it was picked, seasoned, and packed into pans where its own gelatin set it into a sliceable loaf. The ears went in for gristle and body. Served plain, it was head cheese, and served with vinegar, it was souse, eaten in cold cubes like a delicacy. You can still spot it in a deli case here and there, but few make it at home, and even the scrapings off the bone became a loaf of their own. 9. Scrapple and liver mush. Whatever meat clung to the head and bones after the souse was simmered down, bound with cornmeal and broth, and pressed into a loaf that sliced and fried up crisp. In the mountains they called it liver mush or liver pudding, and to the north along the Mason-Dixon line they called it scrapple, the same humble pudding that once cost nothing but a day's labor and now sells in a store by the pound. It was the bottom of the barrel turned into breakfast, and there was one organ dish on that table the government would, in time, make it illegal to sell. Number 8. Sausage canned under lard. Here is where a modern food inspector would lose his composure. The sausage was fried into balls, packed hot into sterilized mason jars, and then sealed by pouring hot melted lard over the top until the meat was covered and all the air was shut out. Set on a pantry shelf, no refrigeration, it kept for months, and a woman from Virginia who grew up eating it wrote years later that she wondered why they had not all died of food poisoning. They mostly did not. The reason fresh pork was treated with such fear has a name, and it is nearly upon us. And the blood saved at dawn now comes due. 7. The blood pudding. The blood saved earlier in the day was not thrown out. It was cooked, thickened, seasoned, and made into blood pudding or blood sausage, a dark, rich food. Across the ocean, the same thing as black pudding, and the German and Eastern European hands at American butcherings made their own versions of it. No plant could collect that blood and sell it to a home cook today under modern rule. It is one of the oldest foods our kind has, and in this country, it has all but vanished. And the humblest part of all had the strangest afterlife. 6. The bladder again. I told you that small part had a second job. Rinsed clean and stretched, the hog's bladder was used for storage, tied over the mouth of a stoneware crock to seal the lard inside against air and vermin, a lid grown by the animal itself. The lacy caul fat that wrapped the organs was saved too, to wrap and protect the leaner meats so they would not dry out. Nothing was a container that had to be bought, so the hog supplied its own. Wax paper and the glass jar made every bit of it obsolete in a single generation. And then there was the masterpiece, the one thing that took a full year to make. We are down to the last handful now, and these are not tricks or chores. These are the things that told you who a family was, what they knew, and what they could do that almost no one can quite do anymore. 5. The year-aged country ham. This was the crown of the whole hog, the proof of a family's skill. A ham salted, cured with saltpeter, smoked over hickory, and then hung to age for a full year or more, deepening into something close to the great hams of Europe. In the late 1940s, a country ham could bring $1 a pound, and that, one man remembered, was big money then, real money, more than a day's wage for a single ham. A few old curing houses still make it the right way. Most families would not know where to begin, and none of it, not one bite, worked without the fat. 4. Lard, the whole economy. Every scrap of fat from the entire animal became lard, and lard was not a sometimes thing. It was the only shortening a family had, the grease for every biscuit, every fried egg, every pan of cornbread for a year. A hog was, in a real and literal sense, a year of cooking walking around on 4 legs. And the parts even the family could not eat did not go to waste either, for the rendering trade turned hog glands into medicine, into the insulin and the heparin that have kept human beings alive ever since. The animal gave at both ends of life, and there was even a saying for how complete it all was. 3. Everything but the squeal. The liver, the heart, and the lungs together were what the old butchers called the pluck, or the haslet, and nearly all of it was eaten or traded away. The phrase was already in print in a Texas packing house report back in 1913. The boast that a hog yielded everything but the squeal, and the old farmers had their own joke on top of it, that even the squeal got sold off to Chevrolet to put in the doors of the cars that squeaked. They half meant it. The waste of a whole animal was, to them, a kind of sin. But one part of that pluck is now, by the plain letter of federal law, contraband. 2. The liver and lights. Now the word comes back. The lights, you remember, were the lungs, the old name for the light organ filled with air, and at a hog butchering they were cooked together with the liver in a dish, eaten just once a year, the haslet, a feast that came and went with the day. Here is the part on that table I promised you at the very start. In 1971, on the strength of a study from 1969, the United States Department of Agriculture banned the lungs of livestock from human food and wrote it into the Code of Federal Regulations in one flat final line that livestock lungs shall not be saved for use as human food. It is the reason a true Scottish haggis cannot legally cross the American border to this day. The dish those families ate every winter is now by name forbidden to sell, and yet the lights were never really the point. 1. Using the whole hog. Every method on this list, all 29 before it, came down in the end to one thing, and it was not a recipe and not a trick. It was a refusal. There was no supermarket coming, no freezer humming in the corner, no second chance if the meat spoiled. And so a family learned to use every part, the bladder, the fat, the feet, the head, the lights, because waste was the single luxury they could not afford. That was the master skill, the one that held all the others inside it, the knowing that this one animal was the whole year and that nothing in it could be let go. That old federal line forbidding the lights is not the verdict on careless people. It is the verdict of a world with refrigeration and supermarkets and room to throw food away, passed down on families who had none of those things. And so the lights went out. Not the lungs. The light itself, the knowledge, the smokehouses fallen to leaning ruins, the hands that knew the look of the water at 160 degrees, all of it going dim while a few of us are still here to remember. So the next time you pass a tray of pork under plastic, remember that it once took a whole family a whole day in the cold to do what a machine now does unseen, and did it with more care and far less waste than we manage with all our rules. If any of this stirred something in you, do one small thing this winter. Render a single batch of lard the old way, or cure one piece of pork with nothing but salt and patience just once, and feel the knowledge in it for yourself. And then tell me below, because I know some of you carry this in your bones, who remembers a real hog butchering The frost and the fire and the smell of a working smokehouse, a grandfather who used every part and called the lungs the lights. Leave it in the comments and let the rest of us hear it before it is gone for good. Next time we are going after something just as forbidden, the lost Depression-era tricks men used to hunt for gold that are flatly illegal today. The kind of thing that could get you arrested now and once just put food on the table. Subscribe so you do not miss it, because the lights are not all the way out yet, and as long as you are still here listening, a little of that flame is still burning.